GJ Math. Let's practice a bit of sigma notation. So if you get stuck or you are unsure of what to do, please go back to the lesson video and just check all the steps you need to follow. Then you'll be able to do all the questions we're going to discuss today. Good luck with the last two. Those are real exam level questions, but I'm sure it will be okay. And enjoy. Question 1. Now they give me sigma, and I need to analyze what they're actually telling me. So remember, I'm always looking at the bottom number. Is it a 1 or is it not? That would tell me how many terms there are. So in this case, the number of terms, would be equal to top minus bottom plus 1, but in this case it would just be 20. So now I must sub in the bottom number into the variable. Now the variable is k, but now I have a problem because the Tn part of this sigma does not have a k. It only has a 7. So if this happens, then your pattern is just 7 plus 7 plus 7, 20 times. So to answer their question, you just say 20 times 7, and the answer is 140. So they're trying to trick you there. Answer is just 140. Let's look at the next one. So if I now look again, the number of terms is just 5. I get the first term by subbing in the bottom number, so that's a 1. Then subbing in the next one, the next one, the next one, until I get to the top number. And then the question is, what do I get if I add all of these together? That would just be 15. So it only counts 2 marks. These are trick questions because it looks so small, and then people get stuck with what to actually do in these questions. So you would get a mark for writing out the sequence and getting the answer. Writing out the sequence and getting the answer. Please don't let them catch you out with these sums. It is actually as easy as you can see on screen. Question 2. So now we're getting into real sigma sums. And remember, the steps with sigma, always sub in your first 3 terms, starting at the bottom number, and then just one more and one more. That will help me to identify, is it an arithmetic or a geometric sequence? Then I make my list, and then I do Sn. So let's go for it. So to get term 1, I will say 4. Let's just start by saying, okay, so term 1 would equal 4 times 1 minus 13. Term 2 would equal 4 times 2 minus 13. And term 3 is 4 times 3 minus 13. Okay, so 4 minus 13 is negative 9. 8 minus 13 is negative 5. 12 minus 13 gives me minus 1. I can see I'm just adding 4 every time. The next term would be 3 and then 7. So if I make my list, I want to work out Sn. I can see A is minus 9. D is 4. N is the top number minus the bottom number plus 1. So it's just 20 in this case. And then I can just go and sub it into the normal Sn formula. So S20 would equal 20 over 2, then 2a plus n minus 1 times d. Type it all in the calculator and you would see the answer is 580. Question B. So I'm going to do exactly the same, but now it's a bit trickier because I'm not starting at 1. So if I sub that just in the calculator, I will get to my term 1 as minus 13 over 64. Term 2 would be minus 13 over 16, and then the next one would be minus 13 over 4. So it's not a very nice pattern, but I can see I'm timesing, or the bottom number, I am dividing by 4, but because at the bottom my R value will be times 4. So A is equal to that fraction, R is equal to 4, and then my number of terms, now very important, because it's not a 1 at the bottom, so number of terms would be top minus bottom plus 1. And that would then give me 13 plus 1 is 14. Now I can just sub it into the Sn formula. So S14 would be equal to my A value, and then R to the power n minus 1 all over R minus 1. And the answer would be this massive answer, but just trust your calculator and write it down. So like I said, geometric number patterns can get very big or very small answers very easily. Okay, let's see where you would get your marks. So if the question A counted 4 marks, I'm definitely going to get a mark for writing out the pattern, then for subbing into the correct formula and getting the right n value. And the answer would get me the 4th mark. So where would I get my marks for question B? For getting the right pattern, then for subbing incorrectly into the formula, and then for the answer. So it would count just 4 marks. Question 3, write the following series into sigma notation. So it's not asked very often in exams, but you must be able to reverse this. And if they give you a pattern, be able to write sigma. Now remember, I'm just going to do the end part just there. So we need to figure out how many terms are there. If you write your own sigma, please start at 1. Don't make it complicated. And then we need to figure out what's the Tn formula to write there. So let's start with the list. So I can see a dot, dot, dot. There's not an equal sign. So I am going to have to do the Tn formula because I now know Tn is equal to 33614. N is what I want to work out. A is minus 2. And R, I can see I'm multiplying by 14 divided by 2 is 7, but it's negative. So I need to figure out how many terms are there in this sequence. Starting with the Tn formula, I can say Tn is equal to A times R n minus 1. Now, that is the Tn formula, so I can actually do this at the end, or I can do it right now, minus 1. But I decided to work with a K in this sigma. You can keep it in n. There's just 1 or 2 examples where n doesn't work, but choose any variable, even if it's an n. Okay, so now I need to work out what is the top number, and that's why I need to do the Tn formula. So they told me the last term in this sequence is equal to 33614, and I can just make the Tn formula equal to that and then work it out. So first step, I'm going to divide by -2, and that is going to give me minus 16807 minus 7n minus 1. So now that I can just shift fact. Now remember, your calculator won't like the minus, so just ignore the minus for now and put it in your answer. So calculator would say it's 7 to the power 5. We know it was negative 7 to the power 5. And there we go. Now I can see that 5 is equal to n minus 1, so n is equal to 6. To answer their question and write this in sigma notation, I now know if I start at 1 below the sigma, I am going to end at the 6th term, and that is my Tn formula. You can put this in a bracket if you want, but that would give me full marks. So where do I get full marks? I get a mark for putting in the top value correct, writing the Tn formula, working out what n is, and then starting with the Tn formula and making it equal to the last term. That's where I would get my 5 marks. So now we're getting to the exam level questions. So they're giving me sigma, they are giving me a pattern, or a formula to a pattern, and they are telling me the sigma is equal to a specific number. So that means they are giving me the answer to Sn. So I can immediately say Sn is equal to 1575. N is what they're asking me, or what they're telling me to work out. But remember, because it's sigma, and because I didn't start at the 1 at the bottom, I know n is actually going to be equal to top minus bottom plus 1. So n is equal to p minus 2. So I'm just keeping that for later. I'm not going to do the sum with the p minus 2 value. It's just going to be too complicated. Okay, so I need to figure out what's a and d. I do that by getting term 1, term 2, term 3. So term 1 is 4 times 3 plus 3. I'm not subbing in a 1 because my sigma did not start at 1. Okay, so please don't let them catch you out with that one. Okay, term 2 I would get when I do that sum, and term 3 when I do that calculation. So 12 plus 3 is 15, 16 plus 3 is 19, 20 plus 3 is 23. So if I update my list, I can now see that this is definitely arithmetic because I'm plussing 4 every time. And remember the tip I gave in the lesson video, if the variable is just multiplied in the sum, then it's definitely arithmetic. Okay, so A is 15 and D is 4. So my goal now is to calculate n. because if I have n, I can get p, what they're actually asking me. So I'm going to do Sn. I'm going to start with 1575 equals n over 2, 2a, plus n minus 1, and then d was just 4. Okay, I don't like fractions there, so I am going to multiply by 2 on both sides. That gives me 3150 is equal to, I can just simplify this a bit, so that's 30 plus 4n minus 4. And now I want a trinomial, so I am going to say 4n squared. 30 minus 4 gives me 26, and then minus 3150. Okay, so that is a big trinomial. I can just use the formula to get that answer. You are welcome to use the white calculator. Just make sure you write the brackets correctly so your teacher does not suspect that you use the calculator. Even though the number is that big, she's going to know. But if you follow the steps, then she can't penalize you. Okay, I am going to use the formula. So n is equal to minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4a, and then c, remember the minus, all over 2a. If I type that in, n is equal to, or n is equal to. If I type it in, I get an answer of 25 or minus 31.5. Now, this is a pattern or a sequence and a series, so n is not allowed to be negative or a decimal. So I must show my teacher that I am disqualifying that one. So equal with a line through, or you can write not applicable and then underline or highlight this one. But that's not my final answer. The question was to work out what is p. So I can now use this formula that we got initially and say, I know n is 25, but n was the top minus the bottom plus 1. So therefore p was equal to 27. And now that's the final answer. So where would I get my 6 marks? I'll get my 6 marks from writing a formula, or I'll get my first mark for writing out the sequence. Then for subbing into the correct formula, I'll get a mark for equaling it to Sn. So there's 2 marks for that line. Then for the trinomials, 2 answers. And then actually for working out what is p. How was that? So this is what you can expect for exams. Please study this. One more. Okay, so the last question. You can see it's a sigma sum, so I am going to get the first 3 terms by subbing in minus 2, then minus 1, and then 0 into that formula. If I do that on the calculator, I'll get this is 64 minus 32 and then 16. From that, I can see that my a value is 64. My d or r, I must now decide. These are fractions and my variable is in the exponent, so that's a giveaway that this is a geometric pattern. So r would be equal to minus a half. And then n is what I'm looking for. But just like the previous sum, I know n is equal to top minus bottom plus 1. So in this case, that would actually then equal to p plus. I need to check that they give me Sn. And yes, this is sigma. And there's a value after the equal sign. So Sn is equal to 85 over 2. So now I can sub in to figure out what is n, and if I have n, I can figure out what is p. So I'm going to start with my Sn formula, but I know it's 85 over 2 is equal to my a value, and then r to the power n minus 1, all over r minus 1. So step 1 in this case, I am going to multiply with the right side denominator. So that would give me minus 3 over 2. I am just going to multiply the left by that, and that is going to give me minus 63.75. You can keep it fractions or decimals. It's your choice. Okay, that is still all equal to 64, and then minus a half to the power n minus 1. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 64, and that is going to give me minus 255 over 256. That equals minus a half to the power n minus 1. I'm going to take that minus 1 over, so that's going to become a plus 1. And that then actually leaves me with 1 over 256 is equal to minus a half to the power n. I am going to shift fact the 256. That tells me it's 2 to the power 8. But I know I want the base to be minus a half. And the reason you don't see a minus in the previous step is because the exponent was even. So it cancelled the minus. So we know we started with a minus because the base on the right has a minus. Okay, bases are the same, therefore I can drop them. So 8 is equal to n. But very important, the question was to solve for p, not n. So I'm just going to use my formula. N is equal to p plus 3. N was 8, so if I move the 3 over, then p is equal to 5. And that is the final answer. Let's see how you did. So I'll get a mark for writing out the sequence, subbing into the correct formula, then for doing the shift fact, for finding the value of n, and then finally for seeing what they actually asked and getting the answer for p. Okay guys, how did that exercise go? I know some of the sums were really complicated, but you can now see it's doable. Just follow your steps, follow the formulas, and very crucial to identify what you are actually looking for. So what mark did you get for this exercise?
If this video helped you, please like and subscribe.
JJ Math!